The night everything went wrong. Before we begin, understand this. Cases like this don't just haunt detectives, they haunt entire cities. If you think you've seen shocking crime stories before, this one will make you question everything. Subscribe, like, and drop a comment if you believe the truth always finds its way out, because in this case, it almost didn't. The rain had already soaked the streets of Cedar Ridge, Colorado, by the time the first patrol car arrived. Red and blue lights flashed against the quiet suburban houses as officers moved quickly toward a large two-story home at the end of Maplewood Drive. The emergency call had come in only minutes earlier, a neighbor reporting something strange. A front door left wide open. Lights on inside. No response from the homeowner. Officer Daniel Reeves stepped cautiously across the threshold. The house felt wrong immediately. Not chaotic. Not ransacked. Just silent. His flashlight beams swept across the living room, illuminating family photographs, neatly arranged furniture, and a half-finished glass of wine sitting on the coffee table. Then the beam reached the hallway. Reeves stopped. "Dispatch," he whispered into the radio, his voice tightening. "We've got a situation here." At the end of the hall lay the body of 38-year-old Emily Carter, a well-known local financial consultant who had built a reputation helping businesses recover from bankruptcy. The crime scene puzzled investigators from the very beginning. There were no signs of forced entry, no obvious struggle, nothing stolen. But the medical examiner confirmed one thing almost immediately. Emily Carter had died only an hour before police arrived, which meant whoever had been in that house had left very recently. Detective Sarah Whitmore took over the investigation before sunrise. A veteran homicide detective known for her relentless instincts, Whitmore believed that every crime scene had a story waiting to be uncovered. She just had to listen carefully. The first break came from security footage. A neighbor's driveway camera had captured a vehicle passing slowly down Maplewood Drive around 9:17 p.m., just minutes before Emily Carter's estimated time of death. The vehicle belonged to a man named Marcus Hale, and that name immediately caught the attention of investigators. Marcus Hale wasn't just a random acquaintance. He had worked for Emily Carter nearly 5 years earlier as a financial assistant before being fired after a heated dispute over missing company funds. According to coworkers, the argument had been explosive. Some even claimed Hale had threatened her. When police located Marcus Hale the next morning, he looked exhausted, confused, and completely unprepared for the officers waiting outside his small apartment. "I didn't hurt Emily," he said before they even asked a question. Detectives searched his car. Inside the trunk, they discovered something that seemed impossible to explain away: a set of work gloves and a small flashlight. Both items carried traces of Emily Carter's DNA. Within 48 hours, Marcus Hale was charged with murder. The trial moved quickly. Prosecutors painted Hale as a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge for a ruined career. The physical evidence appeared damning. The jury deliberated less than 4 hours.
Guilty.
Marcus Hale was sentenced to death. But from the moment he entered death row, Hale repeated the same words to anyone who would listen. "I didn't kill her. The real killer is still out there." For years, nobody believed him. Until 16 years later, when a young investigative journalist named Lena Torres decided to review the case files for a documentary on questionable convictions. At first, the evidence looked overwhelming. But then Lena noticed something buried deep inside the original police report. A detail so small that almost everyone had ignored it. According to the medical examiner's timeline, Emily Carter's phone had received a text message at 9:21 p.m., 4 minutes after Marcus Hale's car was seen leaving the street. The message had been sent from an unknown number. But the most disturbing part wasn't the sender. It was the message itself. It read only 5 words. "I'm already inside the house." And suddenly, Marcus Hale's story didn't sound impossible anymore. The evidence no one noticed. Lena Torres stared at the message again. "I'm already inside the house." 5 words that had somehow slipped past detectives, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and even the jury that condemned Marcus Hale to death. It didn't make sense. If the message was received at 9:21 p.m. and Marcus Hale's vehicle had already been recorded leaving Maplewood Drive at 9:17 p.m., then someone else had been inside Emily Carter's house while Hale was already gone. Yet that detail had never appeared during the trial. Lena leaned back in her chair inside the dim archive room of the Rocky Mountain Ledger. Around her, boxes of police files and trial transcripts filled the shelves like silent witnesses to a forgotten story. She began reading deeper. And the deeper she went, the stranger the case became. The prosecution's entire argument rested on two key pieces of evidence: the DNA traces found on the gloves in Hale's car, and the neighbor's security footage showing his vehicle near the house. But Lena noticed something odd about the forensic report. The DNA samples recovered from the gloves were not large or concentrated. According to the lab notes, they were secondary transfer traces, meaning the DNA could have been transferred indirectly, not necessarily through physical contact with the victim. That raised a troubling possibility. If Hale had previously worked for Emily Carter, as everyone already knew, then her DNA being present on his belongings might not prove anything at all. Lena felt a chill as she flipped to the next page. Because there was another detail investigators had quietly dismissed. Emily Carter's phone records. The mysterious text message had been logged, but detectives had never identified the sender. In fact, the number used to send it had been deactivated less than 12 hours later. A disposable phone. Someone had gone to the trouble of hiding their identity. But why send a message like that at all? Lena began mapping out the timeline on a whiteboard. 9:17 p.m. Marcus Hale's car leaves the street. 9:21 p.m. Emily Carter receives the text, "I'm already inside the house." 9:24 p.m. Emily Carter's phone activity stops completely. 3 minutes. That was all the time separating the text message from her estimated time of death. Which meant one thing. Whoever sent that message had been inside the house during the final moments of Emily Carter's life. Lena contacted Detective Sarah Whitmore, now retired after 27 years, with the Cedar Ridge Police Department. Whitmore agreed to meet her the next morning. The retired detective listened carefully as Lena explained the discovery. At first, Whitmore remained silent, her eyes focused on the printed phone records. Finally, she spoke. "That message bothered me back then," she admitted quietly. But the prosecution believed Hale had sent it to confuse the investigation. Lena frowned. But his phone records never connected to that number. Whitmore nodded slowly. "I know." The room went quiet. For the first time, Whitmore looked uneasy about a case she had once felt confident solving. "If Marcus Hale didn't send that message," Lena said carefully, "then someone else was inside that house while he was already leaving." Whitmore's jaw tightened. "And if that's true," she said, "then we may have executed the wrong man." Lena felt the weight of the words settle heavily between them. Marcus Hale had been sitting on death row for 16 years. His final appeal was scheduled in less than 8 months. If the investigation had missed a second person at the crime scene, then time wasn't just running out. It was almost gone. But the most disturbing discovery came later that night when Lena managed to trace the disposable phone number through archived telecom data. The number had only been used twice. Once to send the message to Emily Carter, and once earlier that same evening. The call had lasted just 12 seconds. And the person who received it wasn't Marcus Hale. It was someone much closer to the investigation. Someone who had testified in court. Emily Carter's business partner, David Langford. The truth buried in plain sight. The name David Langford echoed through Lena Torres's mind long after she closed her laptop. Langford hadn't just been Emily Carter's business partner. During Marcus Hale's trial, he had been one of the prosecution's most convincing witnesses. He had described Hale as unstable, angry after being fired, and desperate to reclaim money he believed Emily owed him. His testimony helped shape the narrative the jury ultimately believed, a bitter former employee returning for revenge. And now, 16 years later, the phone records revealed something that changed everything. The disposable phone that sent the message, "I'm already inside the house," had made a 12-second call to David Langford earlier that evening. Lena immediately contacted Detective Sarah Whitmore. Within hours, the retired detective was sitting across from her again, reviewing the call logs under the cold glow of Lena's desk lamp. Whitmore's face slowly hardened. That call was never disclosed during the investigation. she said quietly. If Langford received it, he should have been questioned immediately. But he wasn't, Lena replied, which raised the question neither of them wanted to ask out loud.
Why?
Whitmore pulled out the original case files she had kept after retirement. Inside were transcripts, timelines, and evidence summaries she had studied for months back in 2008. As they flipped through the documents, another disturbing pattern appeared. During the early stages of the investigation, detectives had briefly considered the possibility that Emily Carter's financial firm was involved in a large internal dispute. Several high-value client accounts had shown unusual transfers in the weeks leading up to her death. But that lead had quietly disappeared from the investigation. And the person responsible for managing those accounts had been David Langford. Lena felt a knot tighten in her chest. What if Emily discovered something? She said slowly. Something involving the company finances? Whitmore nodded. And Hale became the perfect distraction. The theory quickly began to make sense. If Emily Carter had uncovered financial misconduct inside her own firm, Langford could have been facing prison, bankruptcy, and the destruction of his career. Silencing her would eliminate the problem. But framing Marcus Hale would eliminate suspicion. A former employee. A documented conflict. A convenient timeline. It was almost too perfect. Within 2 weeks, Lena's investigation exploded into national headlines. The newly discovered phone records forced the state attorney general to reopen the case immediately. David Langford was brought in for questioning. At first, he denied everything. But forensic analysts had already begun re-examining the original evidence using modern techniques. This time, the results told a very different story. Fingerprints recovered from Emily Carter's home, previously dismissed as partial and unusable, now matched David Langford. More importantly, financial investigators uncovered millions of dollars quietly moved through offshore accounts tied directly to him. The pressure mounted quickly. 3 days later, Langford's lawyer requested a private meeting with prosecutors. When Langford finally spoke, the room fell silent. He admitted that Emily Carter had discovered irregular financial transfers tied to several client investment funds. She had threatened to report him the following morning. Langford claimed he went to the house that night to talk her out of it. But the conversation spiraled out of control. Panicked, he left the house moments before Marcus Hale unknowingly drove past the property. That's when Langford realized something. If Hale was seen near the scene, he could become the perfect suspect. So Langford used a disposable phone to send one final message to Emily's phone before leaving. A message meant to confuse the timeline and mislead investigators. I'm already inside the house. The plan worked. Marcus Hale was convicted. And David Langford went on with his life. Until the evidence finally caught up with him. Marcus Hale was officially exonerated weeks later. After 16 years on death row, the state admitted what should never have happened. An innocent man had almost been executed. But the story didn't end there. During Langford's sentencing hearing, prosecutors revealed something chilling. In the original investigation files, Detective Whitmore had written a single note beside the timeline discrepancy involving the text message. A note that had somehow never reached the courtroom. It read, "Timeline conflict, second person likely present." The truth had been sitting in the case file the entire time. Ignored. Forgotten. And if Lena Torres hadn't looked closer, Marcus Hale might have died, with the world believing he was a killer. Cases like this leave one haunting question behind. How many others are still waiting for someone to notice the one detail everyone else missed? If this story kept you on edge, you're not ready for the next case hiding in the shadows. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.